Potassium's good for you, right?
I think so. What does contains? How do you even say some of these words? Anyway,
There's a warning label on that can somewhere. It says something like that. There's a funny story from my college years where I had this friend who it says like contents under pressure, right?
yeah.
And he said he didn't read it that way. He read it as contents under pressure. And
Really?
so he's always really nervous that the can would content, and he wasn't sure what that meant, but if you put any pressure on it, that it would content, and that would be a bad thing. So that was hilarious.
Or was it content until pressure was added, or
Contents, plural? Content? I'm contents.
or it only became content when
Yeah.
pressure was applied?
Look at this sweet product placement.
There you go.
You got to watch it on YouTube to see it. People.
Back in the day. We should
Did you want to see the back? Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Yeah. We should reopen the store.
We should reopen the store.
You too can have a very fancy coffee mug to hold your drafting supplies on your desk.
I think I did do that until it fell over and broke. AKA assault by kitty.
That's what cats do. They look at you while they slowly push the stuff off the counter.
Like, hey, check this out.
About it. Yeah.
I think that's sort of like, it's a metaphor for like, the profession sometimes.
It's like a project manager?
Or yeah, it's just like, hey, look. It's like,
yeah.
Oof.
It could be your client. It could be the contractor. It could be the permitting office. It could be your consultant, on a project. Oh, yeah, we'll get you that. As they slowly push it off a cliff.
So what we're saying is architecture is a lot like a cat. You never know when it's going to attack.
It's true. It's true, though. It's funny because it's true. I should
look around, make sure my cat's not trying to attack me.
Well, and if the mug really was just a pencil holder, I don't see why you didn't just glue it back together. Just keep on going. That's sustainable. Don't throw it away. Don't put it in a landfill. Come on.
I think who knows where
I'm green shaming you right now.
You are. Although I did just, actually, funny you say that. I did just show my sons how to glue back a handle on a coffee mug.
You did?
Yeah.
But that's perfectly fine. What do you mean? You're going to throw it away? Don't do that.
Well, actually, it was one we got way back in the day. Actually, it was from 2008. And it was our 8-year-old son's, probably 7 at the time, artwork. And
one of those mugs.
Can't get rid of that. I mean,
you sentimental. Yeah,
exactly. We glue that sucker together. Exactly.
Right. Was it one that they had made out of clay, or was it that the artwork had been transferred onto it?
We have both, except for this particular one was just artwork transferred onto it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't get rid of that. It even had his name and the year it was made and all of that other stuff. And so sentimentality.
Architects should do that. I mean, if you get some sketches transferred onto a mug, get it glazed, that'd be cool.
I think
go for that.
I've done that before, actually, where I've done some sketches, like my ragdoll sketches, and gotten T-shirts made out of them. And then sold them for a little while.
Nice.
I think all of 4 people in the world are wearing them.
Yeah.
My wife being one of them.
Yeah, right. The sympathy purchase.
Exactly.
It's like when your kids come home with the fundraiser, and the parents and the grandparents are the only ones who buy from your kids, because every kid in school is selling that stuff, right? So
yeah. Or Actually, it's funny is that when I was still back in the office and it was a Girl Scout cookie time, we'd bring my daughter in and she'd like walk around and kind of guilt people into buying them. And so she
Yep.
gets older and she's still selling them. And now there's other people and they've got daughters and they're now joining and stuff like that. And there's people like selling earlier and earlier. And I remember one time I texted my daughter and I'm like, hey, people are already selling Girl Scout cookies in the office. I mean, are you? And they're like, oh no, that's against the rules. They shouldn't be selling them so early. And she's just like demanding a recall of their orders. Yeah.
It's a system of checks and balances. Yeah.
It is. That's a criminal organization, just to let you guys know.
It is money laundering.
It is.
Drug pushing. Drug pushing at the least, money laundering.
Very much so. I mean, it's all criminal activities regardless.
Right.
Can't have like these little girls walking around selling $4 boxes of cookies and just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, I've got a fun little trip on the docket tomorrow. So as we record this tomorrow, but everyone will hear about this after tomorrow. I've signed up to ride the rim. Any guesses what that means?
You're going to an all-you-can-drink Mexican bar?
Explain that.
Bottomless margaritas.
I'm going to circle the drain. I think that's what that.
Well, that's after you
right.
go through a night of bottomless margaritas. But they put the salt on the rim and.
Yeah, it makes it fun, right?
Yeah,
it makes it a meal. A margarita is a meal because of the salt on the rim. That's what you're saying.
My wife would totally agree with you.
You just threw her under the bus.
Exactly. No. Yeah. So explain to me what I mean. I'm guessing that it's quite possibly a cycling tour or something like that around Crater Lake.
Getting closer, getting warmer. Yes, that's exactly it.
Look at me. So guessing with my mind.
You figured out that I live near a volcano that's full of water. Yes. And there's a road that it circles around what used to be a mountaintop, and now it's a big crater. So yeah, there's this group ride. They actually close most of the road that goes around the rim of the Crater Lake to cars. They did it last weekend for one day. They're doing it this weekend for one day. And so while a piece of the road remains open that connects the two visitor centers and the north and south entrance to the park, there's this big section that goes around the east edge of the rim of the volcano that is closed to car traffic. And it's 33 miles round trip. You do it clockwise, and it takes between 3 and 5 hours to do. I was reading through the FAQ today, and it was like, know what you're getting yourself into. It's like, should you bring kids? It's like, we highly encourage visitors to understand what they're getting themselves into before they decide to bring their children along for this bike ride, because it's like a bike ride. It's around the edge of this thing. You're looking down on this beautiful lake. The weather's always perfect, right? It's like there's all these assumptions that people make. And then there's the harsh reality of it's like over 3,000 feet of climbing around the rim. Over 33 miles, it's up and down and up and down, and you're kind of like doing these little peaks and valleys the whole way. And so it sounds like it's quite a ride. And there's no food around it. There's only at the visitor centers that they serve food. And they do provide water, though. They do have stops for that along the way. So you just need to bring a refillable water bottle.
Is it like on the road, or is it on trails, or is it a mix of both?
It's all on the road.
Okay.
I got to plug my laptop in real quick here.
Prior planning prevents poor performance.
It just gave me a warning. Power save mode is about to go on. I'm like,
oh hey,
crap.
Check this out. Can you guess what my t-shirt says?
Oh, nice.
Wait, hold on.
Is it Radio Shack TRS 80?
That's right.
That's awesome.
I forgot that
we never had one of those. We had like a little Franklin. Our very first computer was a was it a Franklin or a Texas Instruments? Now that I say that, it might have been a Texas Instruments. No, Franklin is really like popping into my brain. And it was like this, it had a keyboard. This thing was super small. And the keyboard was like those buttons you find on your washing machine now, where they're like plastic coated dimples that you push in, kind of like a speak and spell, if you want to get a little more nostalgic. But
I'm pretty positive that the computers that we learned how to type on in school was, it was the TRS-80.
I do remember seeing them in school. It's like a one-piece unit, right? Where the keyboard is molded up into the monochrome screen. It's all one piece. It's like the very first iMac right there.
Exactly. And
it was an all-in-one.
Well, they had that where it was all molded together. And then they had the ones that, later on were kind of like monitor, keyboard, and a hard drive, kind of like all separate. But I felt nostalgic. And
that's cool.
My wife was like, "Did you get a new shirt?" Like, no, I've had this shirt for a while, but I rarely ever wear it.
I forgot I had that shirt.
I forgot I had it. I figured, I keep wearing graphic tees on the recordings that I gotta, shake it up and start getting some more. But, I just realized that I'm like, wait, you can't see my shirt. You must.
You must see my shirt.
I'll go ahead and admit that this is the second day of wearing it because I did wear it last night at back to school night. And like all of the parents were like looking at my shirt like, hey, I did that too. So clearly we're all equally as old.
You might as well had a t-shirt on that said, my t-shirt is cooler than your t-shirt.
Or yes, we are all this old.
We're this old.
So sorry.
I'm Radio Shack old.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? Speaking of which, there are still a few Radio Shacks that are still around. And I went to...
I've heard that, but I have not seen them.
And I actually saw one in an old town that, we go to often, little small town that we go to often. And it is not, the good old Radio Shack that you kind of remember. It's somebody either using the name Radio Shack and logo, or they just forgot exactly what they were because it was basically kind of a catch-all.
Remember, like Radio Shack was there was two departments basically. There was like the front of the store, which was gadgets and stuff, alarm clocks, RC cars,
games,
I don't remember
little
what else.
Robots,
phones.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like house phones, not cell phones.
Exactly.
Right? Maybe some desk fans. It was kind of like what's the name of that brand that is always Sharper Image? It was kind of like a cheaper version of Sharper Image, maybe more just like more middle class,
accessible, affordable,
right.
and every man's Sharper Image.
And then in the back of the store was the business.
Yes.
Of like, this is the Radio Shack that I loved.
This is exactly.
Every adapter under the sun and every electronic component, right? And it was like 9-volt battery connectors and little plastic boxes and little transformers, and there was all these really
circuit
cool
boards,
pieces
diodes.
For you to you could just make something out of anything. And when I was a kid, when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, so we had show and tell at school, right? as we all did back then. And my dad made this thing out of Radio Shack parts. It was a plastic box, maybe 3 inches wide, 5 inches long, 2 inches high. And inside the plastic box was a transformer, a 9-volt battery, some other stuff that he somehow figured out how to do this. He drilled holes in the sides, had copper wires come out, like stranded copper wire, and splayed them out so they were on the sides of the box, and then covered them in tin foil on the side. And here's the idea. So pass this thing around. Take it to school and pass it around. The the sharing time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's my show and tell. I'm not going to tell you what this is. We're just going to pass it around. And this thing would like, I don't actually still to this day understand how it worked, but it was like, if you tip it a certain way, it will shock you with a 9-volt battery. So it was like playing Duck, Duck, Goose, except the goose got shocked when we passed this thing. And I know people are like, what's Duck, Duck, Goose? What's Radio Shack? What
What's a
is
9-volt
show and
battery?
tell? What are any of these things, right? What's a transformer? Because some of our audience is of the younger generations, but it was back when we were kids, it was fun to shock the other kids in your class.
Mm. Oh yeah, yeah.
This was like the evolved version of the whoopee cushion, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. How
you'll have to look that one up as well, folks.
So how did you check, or I mean, because I'm pretty sure it seems standard, but it might not have been. How did you check to see if your 9-volt battery still had a charge?
Oh, well, you just put it on your tongue.
Exactly.
That's what I still do. That's what you still do.
Exactly, right? People are like, I remember good. No. I remember the first time I did that when my kids were watching me, and they're like, what are you doing? You're like, try it. And then, of course, then they're all like, did you? Ooh, let me try it. It's great.
There's so many people who are so scared to do that too. It's just a very scary thought.
Like, no, it's going to hurt me. Like, no, it really isn't.
Right.
I mean, my dad was very much into consumer electronics, did a lot of work in electronic stuff, repair for other people, for friends and things like that. So he was the guy that everybody called when they needed something fixed. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like at least, 2, 3, 4 times a week, he would be heading off to Radio Shack. And of course I would be going with him. And most of the time, exactly. Exactly. It was just like, come on, man, Yes. I mean, and so to, of course, go and see the RC cars and all of that other stuff up front was fun, but then just, going into the back and seeing the 1,000 different spools of every gauge of wire that was there, all the different connectors, the soldering irons and all of that other stuff. He would do his own computer repair, and it was back in the day when, he would did all of these things. I remember we had been taking this trip, I don't know, since early ages of me to probably early teens. And then from there, it probably just dropped off. But, and I think so did Radio Shack. But, I was even remember going back, and that's where he would go to get his vacuum tubes.
Wow.
Exactly. That's how.
For what?
For people who still had, radios,
Yeah. Okay. So a tube amplifier for his receiver, his stereo receiver. Okay.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
And the thing about it is yes, we've microized everything. And I've right behind my head is a little small Bluetooth speaker and all of that other stuff.
In your ears. Yeah.
And in my ears. Yeah, that's true. And,
right.
And it's just, there is something fun about, I guess, the mechanics, you could call it, of a vacuum tube, a reel-to-reel, all of these things. There was just a quality of sound that you just
turntables
you just don't get anymore. And thankfully, turntables are coming back, but they're all still semi digitally enhanced and things like that. So, we want to get the cracking and popping sound. I was just like, no, that's when that you've either A, abused that record, or B, you've listened to that record so much that you've worn a hole through it.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. We used to call those the hi-fi, right?
That
was the stereo. It was a cabinet that sat in the house.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And, and then once he stopped doing things that had vacuum tubes or something, he still had a whole thing of vacuum tubes in the, in the shed. And so I would go and I would grab a handful of vacuum tubes, and what else can you do with them but throw them at your friends?
I'm going to have you hold on for a second. I think what I need to do here is I need to do a show and tell of stuff that I pull out of the room next door to me as I go through it. And because there I think this could be a valuable reason again to have people come over to the YouTube channel just to watch at least these segments when we're going to do something more visual besides just our beautiful faces talking.
Of course.
But yeah, please hold. Please hold.
I feel alone. Maybe I should sing. No, you guys don't want. Could read the ingredients of a Coke Zero.
All right, I'm back. I grabbed the first thing I could see, and you know what I
It's
noticed
time
as soon as I
for
walked
show
in?
and tell.
Oh, a nice little jingle there. Okay, so I noticed the very first thing that I was going to grab is no longer there, which means my wife has already tossed it. All right, so this may not be a long-lived segment, depending on how often she goes into that room. But any guesses as to like the category of items I'm about to show you? This is a room that is a workshop. It was a workshop. It'll be transformed into something else. So it had tools in it. It still has some tools in it. So tools is a category for sure. But also any other manner of items that, you know, you would normally keep in your garage could also be found in this room.
I mean,
and this room was fully stocked.
One of my
full of crap.
One of my first
when we bought
just
the house.
gut because of the age of the house, it being a workshop, and being fully stocked would just be jars of screws.
Those do exist. This is way better than that. You ready?
Yes.
I'm gonna hold it up here.
Oh,
this is like straight out of E.T. or the Goonies.
We had that very brand. No,
it
show
swivels.
the back.
Yep, the back has an outlet plug, duplex plug.
You flip it up. You plug it into the wall. Right?
It's weird. It doesn't actually like flip up. I think you had to plug a cord into this one. It does swivel a little bit, but but not all the way. You can't actually plug this one into the wall.
We had one where you would it seemed like it was just like that brand, that you would flip it up and you would be able to plug it into the wall. And it was spectacular. Does it work?
I should try it. Well, it's not charged right now. I just tried turning it on. It has a little light on the top that lets you know if it's charging or not. But it's going to be tricky for me to even find a cord that will fit this very tight 2-prong plug. Okay, so the name on this is a First Alert Ready Light, Ready-Light trademark. And it is model number RL100. And there is a caution tag on here. For safe operation, see owner's manual. Do not expose to rain. Use only with line, cord, wall bracket supplied.
Okay.
There's some danger involved in using this flashlight, is what I'm reading. But what I really like about this is that if you want to hold, this is maybe out of Scooby-Doo, right? Or
hear it squeak when you turn it.
Yeah. Got to get that sound effect. But if you want to hold it at full arm's length and then tip the beam upward, you can do this. This flashlight accommodates. I mean,
exactly. It's sure you couldn't just like turn your wrist.
You could. Nope. Right. That might be. This is for if you're wearing a cast, for instance. This flashlight's for you.
Exactly.
Right? Like they took that into consideration. Now there's another switch right here on the top, and this is labeled beam width. And so I'm going to just, so what this does is it actually there's no way I can show this but there's a bulb in there.
And it goes in and out.
Goes in and out.
I remember it well.
So the mirror is fixed, but the bulb is on this little plunger, and you can put it in and out.
So you said that was First Alert. I know ours was Black and Decker because my dad was a Black and Decker man. Everything was Black and Decker. So I still have
now people are like Milwaukee or DeWalt or Makita, and they're very brand loyal. So your dad was a Black and Decker guy. Yeah,
he was. We had lots of orange tools.
Isn't it funny how these brands like latch onto a color, and that's how they're identifiable, right? So Makita's blue, Milwaukee's red, DeWalt is yellow. It's funny because it's like all these primary colors for the most part.
Ryobi is into the store. Neon green.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you enjoy first, thank you for joining me on this segment of Show and Tell.
That was awesome.
Maybe next episode is your turn. We can take turns doing a show and tell. This is a fun little element to the YouTube show. It is hard, I admit, for the audio only listeners, but you can subscribe to us in both places.
Again, I will say this to those that know exactly what I'm about to say, but use your mind's eye.
Good call.
In picture.
Imagine, if you will,
a utterly both modernly useless, but back in the day, technology.
This is for the thumbnail.
Exactly. You should.
I just did a nice little pose for the thumbnail, and it's kind of a, what would you call this? Vanilla, and a little bit of chocolate accents. Yeah. It's a very appetizing. It's an appetizing look. This old boxy flashlight.
It looks like a mochaccino.
Yeah, and you can pop the front off for easy light bulb changes, which is
easy
very nice.
Access to the light, Clean the lens.
Clean the lens off. Give it a little polish with your shirt.
Dry it off if you accidentally took it out into the rain, because clearly it says on the side, don't.
That's something you don't want to do, right?
Exactly. You think about all of like the different products that you never used the way that they were supposed to, like that. I mean, I bet the reason why my dad had duct tape around the lens,
keep the water out,
is to keep the water out. He was just like, you know what? They didn't make a waterproof flashlight. I'll
make it waterproof. Yeah, exactly.
Put your hand inside of a bag, tape the bag on.
Put the whole thing inside of a bread bag, and
exactly. Yeah, but a Wonder Bread.
Well, we're several minutes into this podcast. Do we have anything architectural to talk about? What do you got?
Isn't all of that architectural?
Clearly, my bike ride wasn't interesting enough. We had to move on to T-shirts and then flashlights.
Yeah, I did kind of like, and I didn't mean to cut you off, actually. I am actually, I'm going on a tour as well. Mine isn't as nice.
You don't have enough little side trips to go on here. Jesus.
Yeah. But the Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research, they put on several different events to kind of like get the community out to see, whether it's like architectural history or history of Detroit or things like that. And there's this one called Spiritual Masterpieces, the 20th Century Churches of Metro Detroit.
Nice.
And it's going to be in one of the old historic churches in what used to be called Mexican Town. All of the different areas throughout Detroit, like many of the major cities had, kind of like these
Little Italy, Chinatown.
Exactly. Detroit has a very famous Cork Town where all of the Irish immigrants went to. But what was interesting about it is it's not going to just talk about, some of these, traditional ones, but, come to find out as I start like scrolling through the events for this particular, is that, we're going to be learning things about Minoru Yamasaki, Nathan Johnson, all of these kind of like, and even like Gunnar Burkitz. I didn't realize that Gunnar Burkett's, we liken him to a lot of different, like very well-known mid-century modern buildings and things like that. And for some reason, I never really connected him to Detroit. Yet this is where he worked out of. He was a professor at the University of Michigan. He operated his practice out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, and worked, quite a bit out of Detroit. And so I started to take a look at it, and it's just this, there's this map that they have of all of his work, and it's pretty amazing to see all of these mid-century masterpieces all over this area that I drive past. I'm like, oh, and
right.
And it's just, promise myself that I'll go back and see them. And so I've just got to, and so now I'm forcing myself. It's like, okay, they're going to be putting on all of these different lecture series and things like that. Our local Grosse Pointe Historic Commission, they put on all sorts of different, like little, like, get to know this architect or get to know that architect kind of thing.
Nice.
From like the early 20th century, talking about the growth and development of the Grosse Pointe area. And there's some pretty famous, architects or architects who trained with other famous architects. Like this person there was one that I was, looking into, and what was interesting about it is that so they had immigrated from Latvia, and Gunnar Burkett's, and he had worked first with, I think, I can't remember. I've now completely blanked on who he had worked with, but I mean, he worked with some pretty famous New York architects before he emigrated to this area. And it was just really, really interesting to kind of like see, people had worked with, McKean, Mead, McKim, and White.
McKim, and Bright.
And White. Yeah, it was just
that is a tongue twister.
Exactly.
Right.
You just pick one of them. It's like, work with Stanford White, work with them. And then to see them, I was reading a story, and again, I cannot recall the local architect's name, but they got their start doing some very, were the designer for Mead, McKim, and White. I'm going to say it real slow.
Good job.
Exactly. And got their start with them and designed some of the buildings that we know attributed to them. And they saw that there was a big, huge boom of development in Detroit. And so a lot of people came to Detroit in those early years that were working with these early 20th century masters and came to Detroit. And basically Detroit has just this amazing level of early 20th century architecture that can rival literally anywhere in early American architecture. And so, yeah, I've started to look at that. And so actually what's funny is, another thing like all of the AIA puts out all of these different like pamphlets, wherever the local chapter is, they'll put something together for the AIA. Come see AIA Detroit, Detroit architectural masterpieces and stuff. And so I happened to be at a friend of ours who was teaching, and they were passing out AIA Flint masterworks or architectural works. There's some pretty amazing work there. Now, granted, they did not come bearing gifts of a bag of coffee that they had promised.
I was going to ask.
It really like missed that opportunity to say, hey, I owe them coffee. I should probably, and I'm going to see them today. I should probably bring that coffee. Still didn't.
Happen. Wow.
So I don't know. I think I've gotten to the point where I don't know if I actually want the coffee. Not that I don't want to try the coffee.
Beyond it.
No, I feel like now it has become this thing, it's just like, it's taken
it's
a life.
more valuable. it's more valuable now.
Yeah, it is
being a thing where
exactly.
it hasn't been fulfilled, and now one can hold this over another
Exactly.
for a very long time and get much more enjoyment and value out of that part of it than just drinking the coffee.
Exactly. There will be nothing gained by actually having the coffee.
Yeah, that would just end it. Well, why would we want to end this?
Exactly. It's like a beef. It's the Sharks and the Jets of architectural podcasts. You slighted me from coffee, so
right. Have to go back to episode 300, people, if you're wondering what Cormac is talking about here.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which I'm pretty sure most people have listened to it and they know what I'm talking about. Come on.
Yeah. Right.
Of course. That's when the beef started.
If our audience are not completionists, shame on them, first of all. But get on that. Get back, listen to all of the episodes entirely. They're in their entirety. And get all the inside jokes moving forward.
Exactly. And don't trust people who promise you coffee.
There's an important lesson to be learned here. If you make a promise, you better keep it.
And if not, no more keeping. Just let me keep this joke going.
Right. Anything else? You got anything else? I am at a loss.
Honestly, it has been a light week at work. There's a good law. I told you that, I had submitted that one deadline.
Oh. You sent like a statistic along.
You
want to share that statistic?
What did I? Oh, that we weren't trying very hard.
Yeah, you haven't tried. Yeah.
So we are doing a project, and with all of the buildings and all of the disciplines, and I have to scroll through because I've forgotten the actual. Yes, here it is. So I've kind of hinted to you, and we've talked about the just enormous amount of documentation that we are now doing. You'd think that with 3D modeling, BIM, all of this other stuff, that we would actually start to actually slow down with the amount. I mean, there was, some of these architects that we were just talking about that, did all of these beautiful masterworks in big buildings back in the early 20th century. I mean, I know I worked for a firm that was a legacy firm of one of the biggest firms in Montgomery, Alabama, and did massive works. And we were doing massive works like that. And they would do like 8 sheets. That's it. 8 sheets for the entire project. And it was getting done. And 100 years later, that building's still standing. And so here we are. We're doing this project. And, I sent to you because I just had to package up just the drawings, not the specs, not the reports, not, a variety of not engineering reports or calculations or any of that other stuff. Just drawing sheets. 2,940.
And you said you're not trying hard enough to hit the 3K mark.
Exactly. Obviously, we weren't trying hard enough to hit 3,000, which...
That's an absurd number of sheets.
It is an absurd amount of drawings.
Absurd.
And here, here's the thing. I bet if I could spend more time. So it was, if you think about it, I mean, so our responsibility, the number of sheets that we had, totaled, let's just call it 560. I think it was 54, 558, something like that. It was just shy of 560, but let's just call it 560. And that's a lot of sheets. It is 8 buildings. And there are some things that I probably could have done to kind of taper them down, but there was so many unique conditions, and each of those unique conditions required something else. And so it's an obscene amount of drawings just on the architectural side of things. But now here we are with all of the engineering to all of these different things, all of the different infrastructure, landscape, signage, everything else to come up with 2,940 sheets is insanity.
It is.
It really is. And
can I put you on the spot and ask, like, how did you manage that size of a document? Because I would imagine that you have to split it up into bundles or whatever because of file size, and you're transferring these as packages and things like that. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. So thankfully we did not have to do a volume 1, volume 2 type thing. Each discipline was submitted separately. So there was a, civil, landscape, architecture, interiors, and so on and so forth. So everyone was an individual package. But I mean, because of the criteria, there's what was called the MIDP. And this MIDP, if I'm, it's basically a document tracker that, has both the document name and all of this other stuff that's part of all of this thing. And so we did have to submit every document as both an individual sheet as well as an individual.
What?
Here, you're gonna love this one. It's all done in BIM. It's all done in Revit, right? And every sheet that was created, so every, that 554 sheets of documents, they required us to have an individual sheet, individually numbered. And it was a very long, like alphabet soup of designations for this.
Like a unique identifier for that one sheet.
A unique identifier for that one sheet, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of those sheets had to be accompanied with an individual, equally numbered the exact same way, CAD sheet, CAD file. So one PDF, one CAD file for everyone. So now we're talking about me submitting, the 2,940 PDFs, individual sheets.
And CAD files.
And double that for CAD files.
So you had to export every sheet as a DWG?
Yes.
Okay, that's what you did. Okay.
Yes.
And automation saved the day, I would have very much hoped for right now.
Automation saved some of the day, but then also, if I would assume that, this size. So what's interesting is, we to manage the model, and we had debated early on.
As one does. Yes.
How do you want to break this up? We have 8 buildings. Do we want to do individual buildings, or how do we want to do this? And you would think, and if I had to do it all over again, I might still consider it this way, is to just do each building individually, just do a package of each of the different buildings. Here's the academic building, here's the auditorium, here's this building, here's that building, right? And package them up. It actually would have probably been far more manageable. But the caveat to all of this is that every building is connected by a basement and sub-basement. And so if you picture
What's
this.
a sub-basement versus a basement? Is there like a second level below?
A second level of basement.
Okay.
So and in fact, like the other building that I did for Hopkins, we have basement, sub-basement, and sub-sub-basement. So 3 levels.
Dumb.
3 levels underneath the ground,
Yeah.
But yeah, whatever. You guys don't deal with basements, so whatever.
I'm in one right now. Not in California, we didn't.
I was going to say, so you're not in California anymore, Toto.
Right.
But the basement itself is basically all of the service areas and all of the mechanical rooms, all of the electrical rooms, food services, everything are underneath. And it's basically this amoebic one plan, one basement that connects every single building.
I just right now, I'm just thinking of all the match lines, right? It's like, good Lord.
My
Scope
Lord.
boxes and match lines.
Oh my God. And that haunted us till the very end.
I'm sure it did.
There are so many match lines. Why are you making me relive this trauma?
I'm just pushing your buttons.
Oh my gosh, there's so many of so many.
Oh, good Lord.
But yes, and that's the thing is like, and sometimes it just didn't make sense with what was being shown versus, like everything underneath. And oh my gosh, so I'll just keep going further. It's like, and then you're showing a roof plan. And then you're showing the ground plane as part of your roof plan, because technically not every building, not all of the basement is covered by a building. There's a lot that's not, like in courtyards, in, plaza spaces and all of this other stuff. But those plazas are immediately over occupied space below. And is that a plaza plan?
That's a roof.
It's a roof. Exactly.
Yeah,
and so
it is a roof.
Exactly. And so there was just, it was a very bizarre way to put this building together. And the reason why we did it the way we did it, which I still feel to this day probably wasn't the right way to do it, was because of
There's no right way.
Well, it was because of the prompting of the reviewers and how they were going to review it. Not how is it going to be built. Forget how it's going to be built. It's how are we going to review this? How are we going to check for quality control and all of this other stuff on the owner and project management company side of things?
Can we just go back to the beginning? This is the cat ready to push the mug off the desk right here. And then it's the management, the reviewer. Oh my gosh.
Well,
dragging this.
I'll give you another example. I mean, we would typically, in a lot of our projects, especially if they're a full service project, do our architecture and interiors as one package because they're interrelated to each other. Well, fast forward to we kept submitting them as a complete package. They wanted us to break it out. And just to let you know that resubmission that I just did was basically was us decoupling interiors from architecture. And if anybody...
That's easy, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, if anybody has in the back of your mind that is an easy thing to do, not just on like a single building, but all 8 buildings and just easy in general, please tell me, because I still couldn't figure it out,
Yeah, of course.
It was interesting. So how did I manage it? Caffeine. Lots and lots.
That was the answer.
It was, I don't know how I answered.
My strategy is caffeine. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, that's it. Jeez. That is it. My strategy is caffeine.
Wow. So did you said that you submitted every sheet as a PDF and a CAD file, but then were there other bundles of PDFs and other, I can imagine that you broke it down by building or whatever, but you're not submitting like one 2,900 sheet PDF. Like,
no,
people can't even open that. Right?
No. I tried to actually send it to our cost estimators, and just the zipping of that. I tried it once, realized
just to zip it
would
take like
all of
3
those
days. Yeah.
Yeah. It actually came up. It started with 27 hours. And I'm like, I don't think I've got 27 hours.
Not only that, but it's not going to do anything. Like the PDFs don't get a lot smaller unless they're rasterized or something. And then you could introduce compression, introduce artifacting and all that. Yeah, it would be a mess.
Yeah, it was, and then you lose so much. Yeah. Anyway, yes.
No. Yeah. I mean, zipping just makes it a package rather than individual files, but it's not saving you any space, and it's not worth the time then to do it.
Right. Yeah. So I did have to separate everything out in bundles and send them out as, this is, what was it? Like 1 of 32 I believe, like one of 32 different packages,
different bundles.
so that, people could actually get them.
What is incredible though, Cormac, is that you are doing this all on a laptop. Like, just think about that for a moment, right? What used to be done in like these crazy workhorse machines that were sitting under our desks, heating, like your cubicle,
sounding like
is now a thin laptop on top of your desk, and you are creating these bundles of insane amount of information and sending it digitally through the air somewhere else. I mean, it's absolutely incredible.
I remember when I was doing, and I thought at this point in time, like it was like, this is an insane amount of documentation. So I was doing a project for City of Annapolis. It was that, that elementary school that we've talked about in the past. And I had to print out, bind, and it was 3 volumes because it was 3 buildings. But it was, again, one of these, historic buildings and all this other stuff. And so there's a lot of information, a lot of unnecessary, whatever, a lot of information. But
of course
they required, so it had to go to 2 different permitting officials, had to go to the county, had to go to the city. So the city, not a very big city, might be the state capital of Maryland, but it's really not that big of a city. And they don't do a lot, like the downtown area, the historic district of Annapolis doesn't really see a lot of like big work going on that I was doing with this historic preservation, addition, renovation to 3 buildings to make it basically one big elementary school. And they didn't realize that they require 10 copies of the submission. That's 10 copies of drawings, 10 copies of specs, 10 copies of everything. And I've got 3 volumes of drawings, 3 volumes of specs, calculations, and things like that. I came in 3 carts, wheeled in 3 carts because I had 3 people helping me, wheeled it in. And they looked at me like, what are you doing? Like, you require 10 copies.
This is your requirement.
They're like, we have no place to put these. I'm like, well, do you want me to just give you one? No. Exactly. Oh my gosh. It was back when I still had my wagon, and that wagon was loaded and dragging low. There was so much weight in that car. So
slammed in the back, right?
Exactly. And so honestly, it was okay to actually like do it this way, where I'm just, taking maybe like a day or 2 extra of like just digitally wrapping things up and sending them off. Thankfully, more and more AHJs in local jurisdictions and permitting offices and things like that are getting on the digital bandwagon.
PDF. Finally. Oh my gosh, 2023.
Exactly, right. And there's still people who, paper copy.
Well, and it's a similar battle is what I was going to say, to like, where do I store this physical stuff versus where do I store this digital stuff?
Yeah.
Because it's like, there's no easy answer, and everybody has a different solution to that problem. Some people are using Box. Some people are using like whatever their intake like storage system is, and then how organized are they, and how do they know like how can they find something where it went? And they have to be on top of all that, and so their IT department is going to solve that problem differently than the people across the street are going to solve that. And this is what architects are dealing with all the time. It's just like, what are your requirements, and how are they different from their requirements? And it's all over the board. There's no standardization in this.
What I find interesting, and what's kind of thankful in a way, or whatever. So you're talking about the digital requirements of like loading something up and, having the review and stuff. City of Baltimore, what they do is they actually will, you can submit digitally, they'll review it digitally, they'll provide comments digitally. And then once they approve it, like actually you've gone and you've made all of the changes that you need to make and any addendums and all of that other stuff, then they will actually require a minimum of one hard copy signed and sealed for their records. And then, of course, an as-built once it's done, signed and sealed for their records. Which really, to be quite honest with you, isn't that bad. If you think about it, like right now, somewhere in the attic space of the city of Annapolis, they've got 10 copies of 3 volumes of drawings for a elementary school.
I'm imagining it's actually in some like mini storage somewhere, probably put away and
probably
on a shelf. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Danger.
I think I'm going to have to find it's decades of pictures on Instagram, or at least it feels like decades of pictures on Instagram. But I think I'm going to have to find that because I do believe that I posted a picture of my truck
project
of my car loaded down.
Like loaded. Nice.
Loaded down with all of the drawings that go in there.
There you go. Well, I'm glad to hear that you had a light week, but it is fun to reflect back on what it takes to kind of get through the submittal process. And I can't believe the amount of information that was produced for this project. And it's like, I think it's an important part of the story, because it's like we go through the process and we just look at it like day to day. What do I have to do today? Oh, I got to model this, or I got to put these views on sheets, or I got to dimension this. But the build up over time and to build these volumes of information that then move on to somebody else, and they take that and they do something with it. They review it, they build from it, like what they coordinate with it, whatever those things are going to be. There's like, we don't really step back and look at the big picture of that side of the business of architecture, which is our deliverable, right? And what's interesting about that is that it's not something that really matters after the building got built anyway, right? It's like it actually by definition is waste, which is kind of crazy to kind of think about it that way too, right? It's waste. But it's meaningful waste. It's useful waste on the path to realizing it's like the design process is full of waste. Like, how many ideas do you throw away to make a decision to go a certain path? You throw away most of them, right? And so it is kind of interesting as we step back after you kind of decompress from the delivery of this deadline and look at it, and it's like, whoa, there is a lot of stuff here. Like, that to me is an interesting kind of presentation in and of itself to an office, to say, look at this, look what we made here. And what can we do next time to make it better, or just acknowledge that like this is a thing that we do, and just appreciate it for what it is, or not appreciate it and say, wow, we need to change the way we do things. I think there's a lot of rich conversation potentially around that kind of that milestone, right? To kind of step back and decompress and say, wow, okay, let's reevaluate now. Let's continue doing the good stuff. Let's stop doing the crappy stuff. What can we change about this situation? What can we learn from it? What information can we share with other teams who are maybe going to do something similar one day? And, I just think that there's a lot of rich sharing that could happen there. And yet we rarely actually do that as a profession, even as a team in an office.
Right. Yeah.
On to the next one.
Exactly.
That's what we do right there.